Hello, everybody. I'm back. Before I get into the meat of the matter on this particular video, something I wanted to touch on here regarding something I said in the previous video, and that was that the the Bible is a deception. That was a misquote on my part. It's the religions that are tainting it with their various interpretations, is what I was kind of alluding to there. But and just put that in perspective from my viewpoint, that the Bible is the inspired Word of God, and whether or not you believe that, or that, a lot of people say, well, man wrote the book. Well, God works through man. That's a possibility too, right? So I guess the question could be who was moving the pen. But neither here nor there, whether you believe in God or not, or the Bible is the Word of God. I want to throw this in there. I have read the Bible, most of it, 75%ish. I've read the statutes, the ordinances, the judgments of God. And I will tell you this, you will find no better justice, no more fair justice than God's justice. Let me give you an example. I don't want to harp on this for too long here, just one example. And one of the 10 commandments is, thou shalt not bear false witness. Well, if you read through the Bible, what's the consequence if someone does bear false witness? In legal land here in this world, they have what's called perjury. And a lot of times, people lie, a slap on the wrist, people withhold knowledge, information. They swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and about the truth, and they don't tell the truth, and people end up in jail for a very long time. I've read cases like that. So I know that to be true. But in God's world, God's law, and the Bible is the book of the law, it says that for men and women, not corporations. This is men and women here we're talking about. All that legal end stuff, that's for the corporate legal entities, has nothing to do with men and women. With respect to bearing false witness, if, for example, someone was to bear false witness in a matter, and the lie would have cost someone, say, 5 years in jail or prison time, let's say, argument's sake. And anyhow, if the one that is testifying is lying is found out to be the liar, lying, bearing false witness, then the one bearing false witness goes to jail for 5 years. So I say that would be a pretty good deterrent to lying, now, wouldn't it? It would keep people honest, very honest in my mind. If your lie is going to cost someone $100,000, $1 million, or 5 or 10 years in jail, and you're caught to be lying, that falls on the liar. That's fair to my view. And then there's all sorts of other. Bottom line is this: is that it doesn't matter what we might do. God has already rendered judgment. It's all there. If this, then that. If this, then that. If this, then that. So anyway, I just wanted to clarify that on the Bible aspect thing here. And so that was it for this part. Now, after this, we're going to get into the meat of the matter and the purpose of this call, or pardon me, this video. This video, I'm going to talk a little bit, get into a little bit further into the taking control. What does it mean, taking control of your securities, your estate, your public estate? So, of course, we're going to start with the foundational document, the registration of birth. That's the original I'm talking about, which was filled out by mom and dad, so on and so forth, and signed and then handed over to the government. So the government has the original, and we can end up with a certificate of live birth or a statement of live birth. These are certified copies from the birth record, from the registry. Excuse me. So the first step in taking control is we've pointed out in an earlier video, that mom was actually the grantor of that original statement of live birth or certificate of live birth. And when she did that, she did it without a will. So we need to take control of that document there. And that's what this really is about, to set the foundation, okay? And once the foundation is set, once you've secured that control, that's the foundation, that's the rock to stand on now. So then you can there's various routes to go with the information on reclaiming your securities, depending on what your objectives are. It's not like a one glove fits all, where everyone takes the same path. There's multitudes, as I say, multitude of possibilities, multitude of ways to get relief, remedy, so on and so forth. So the first part is to end up with sole authority of and over that foundational security, the statement, the original registration of live birth security. And so you want to end up, like I say, with sole authority of and over that security. And that document represents your public estate as well. What does that mean? It represents your public estate. It means that that's the proof of its existence. That's its birth right there. That's what it means. Not you. Remember, you're on the Form 1, the original, the notice of birth, which is done by the doctor, which has nothing to do with this process, really, which is, I just put that out there to, like I say, start in the first video to start from the beginning so people can kind of follow along from the beginning. But it's really the Form 2, the registration of live birth is where it begins here with respect, because now we're going into the public realm. And so that's what it means by this security, this registration of live birth foundational security represents your public estate. And again, that what that means is that's its birth. That's the proof of its existence. Now it exists in the record. It's in the system. It's in the registry. So just like when you install a program into your computer, it's got to be registered so the computer recognizes it. You may not have used the program yet or the application yet, but before you can, it has to be recognized. It has to be in the registry for the system, your computer, to recognize its existence, and whether or not you use the program. So same thing here. It's registered into the system. There's the registration of live birth is registered into the governmental system, the system. And it's in there now, the public system. You can put many words to it. Let's just stick with public and private. So that anyhow, that gets it in the system. So now you haven't done anything with it yet. So for example, no birth certificate has been issued on that registration yet, or that account yet. So although the program's in the system, statement of live birth is in the system, it's not being used yet or utilized in any way, that record. But then eventually, of course, then the birth certificate is, as far as I know, everyone's done it, requested and then used to get a driver's license, social insurance, so on and so forth. And so that was the main thing I want people to get here is that there. So because of when Mom did the granting of that registration of live birth foundational security that represents your public estate, good to understand these things, because you need to have that rock. You want to stand on that rock. So regardless of what you do, you really can't fail. You might make some mistakes along the way in learning, but you can't you can't fail per se, because you're on the rock now. Control is control. Talking soul control, soul authority here, your dominion, so to speak. Yeah. And so it's in there. And so once you start to use it, well, then the birth certificate, so on and so forth, that takes it to the next level. So the point is to fill in the gap here, what Mom didn't do, and we didn't do again when we should have endorsed that certificate back when we turned 18. As I say, it's the name of a child on that birth certificate. And child is a person under the age of 18 years. But yeah, we all went downstream with it, so to speak, and used it as personal ID or presented it as such basically to open up other accounts / trusts. So that's what this is doing here. So our first step in our process, that's what we're doing. We're filling in a gap there, and I can't give you a whole bunch of details here. People running off half-cocked because we want the rock, not a piece of the rock. So it's kind of like 4 steps to this part of the process to get to that rock foundation, and this is just the first step in that process or procedure. And so it depends. It kind of comes down to this, whether Mom is willing to get involved or not, or whether she can or not. Because there's 2 paths to take with respect to ending up with sole authority of and over the security / your public estate, John Paul Smith registration number. Registration number and all that information just connects it back to that foundational security. They know what it all means in the system there. We don't have to explain the law to them here. They know the law. Just if we connect the dots and follow the procedures as they see them, which is not many, but then, as I say, it's all binding on them. It's by their own rules, binding on the Crown, binding on the government, binding on basically anyone who partakes in commercial activity. You want to secure your rights, well, then you got to respect the rights of others. Do unto others as you have them do unto you, I guess. So there's two parts to that part of the process, and yes, your mom's involved. It's easier if your mom's involved. I mean, she's just got to sign something. It's basically a power of attorney, irrevocable power of attorney. But it's the content. It's what's said in that power of attorney that's important here. So it's not a typical power of attorney that you see out there in the out there in the world. It's specific for this purpose, to make a point. So at the end of the day, you have that. You can say, I have sole authority of and over that security / public estate. And if mom won't get involved and do that, well, then there's what we call a default process. And so then that entails a little bit more, so that you end up with, again, and it will by default, because basically what you're asking for here, and again, there's content within what you're asking for here to them to produce. And if they don't produce it, then they don't have it. And by the reasonable man doctrine, you do. And reasonable man doctrine is simply this: is in this context of reclaiming your securities, what we're talking about here is when your mom registered to birth, did she do that for your good and benefit, or the good and benefit of somebody else? Well, any reasonable man, I think, would say without doubt that, well, when my mom did it, of course she would have done it for me or for my benefit, not the benefit of some stranger or strangers. So as part of that default process, the understanding of that. So that's what I say. It's not just it could say these things and show you the forms and all that sort of stuff, but that's not enough. It's you have to have the understanding of the principles and the concepts, and that's what the Reclaim Your Securities information, the 600 plus pages that we have as part of the information package, gets you into clearly. Is to have that understanding of the principles and the concepts. It requires study, no doubt about it. So anyhow, that's the first part of the process, is to take control by having the sole authority at this point. Like I say, it's really the first step of 4. So the fact is that they actually, they assume and presume to have this whole authority of and over that security and your public estate. And again, that's back to the presumption of the abandonment, which is what we're really overcoming here in the first 4 steps, to say, no, I didn't abandon that security, or any other for that matter. And and that's why when we get to about the third part of this, I think, is we'll talk a little bit about the proxy. Why you need the proxy. Again, we keep in mind here, people, the government does not register people when it registers births. It registers information about an event. So there you see the information that's coming into the system. As I say, that registration of live birth, that represents your public estate. It's the birth of it, not you, it. You were on the Form 1. Like you say, and you're in the private, that's how it should be, and that's how it's set up to be at that point in time. Step 2 brings your public estate to keep you isolated out of the public, keep you out of that, bringing now this representation of you, a mirror image of you, but in fictional land, all capital letters, whatever, registration. I mean, it's name and number. It's not so much the style of the name. And so that's the birth of your public estate. That's what you use to interface now in the public. The question is, do you have control, or does someone else have control? And right now, I guarantee if your life is being controlled by others, or the will of others, or whatever, you're not in control. And it's another reason to, the video previous to this, the main point of that is politics, having a government to govern you. It's taking control. You're now the governor, and it's not about being above the law or outside of consequences or anything like that. Nothing like that whatsoever. It's about your freedom. Control of and over the actual physical property by controlling the securities. Control that, and then nobody can take the house. They can't take the car, the TV, the furniture. Once you understand all of this, and it's just what securities are. And which I did in the second video. So that's what we're talking about here. So it's only by assumption and presumption of our abandonment of the foundational security, now that we've lost control, or we never had control. That's just why we did, but we didn't. And they, in our absence, well, they've taken control. And that's exactly in that Mercer versus the Attorney General of Ontario Supreme Court of Canada case I mentioned in a previous video. That tells you right there what happens when there's no one there to claim the inheritance, to take the benefit, if you will. It's not going to be left to waste. Someone's going to step in. It's going to revert to somewhere. And since the government's holding that the original, the registration of live birth foundational security, and by reasonable man doctrine alone, it's I should have control of and over it and be on the beneficial end, not the beneficial interest end, and get a benefit out of this somehow without having all that liability. But in her absence, well then, so you see, everything's just backwards. What should be coming to us more or less has gone the other way, and that's the bottom line. So the point is anyhow, through this process, you're rebutting the presumptions here of the assumptions and presumptions that it's abandoned. No, it's no longer abandoned. That stops, and that's the first step. I hope that gives you a little bit better understanding on that. And like I say, it's all part of our Reclaim Your Securities info package. Further details on that we've had Zoom recording meetings and recordings on that as well. So, that's the end of this one. Step one, if I can put it that way, in the 4-step process to, like I say, so now you solidify that control. So now you're standing on a rock, and once you have that control, you're standing on that rock, and from there is when you start to do things. You see, it's because of an absence of this rock here that a lot of things many of us have done over the years have not been successful. A little hit and miss, but doesn't mean a thing. Nothing solid, nothing repeatable, if I can put it that way. And so that's what I mean by rock. I have that rock first. Don't have that rock first, not standing on that rock, don't have that solid foundation, then everything on top of that, it's just a house of cards. Might stick together for a while and you get a nice tall house of cards, but it's still a house of cards if it's not built on a solid foundation. So that's the reason for these videos, to help you out a little bit there and give you some insight, things to think about. Just one more thing, people, to clarify here with understanding. When I talk about the public estate, what is the public estate? What does all that mean, that public estate? Well, remember, in the system, it's form only. There is no substance. It's form only. That's why I say there's no people in there. You might think you are, but there's no people in there. It might seem like you are, but there's no people in there. Walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, will be treated like a duck. But it may not be a duck, actually. Fiction of law, perhaps. But anyhow, what you see is the house, the car, the TV, the furniture, all of that. That's all tied to that public estate. It's all tied to that registration of live birth foundational security. So you see, when you control that, you control the substance. So although the substance is not their focus in the system, like your computer doesn't see stuff, it sees information, ones and zeros, or however all that works. But there's no house in your computer. You could have a legal description of the house. You have a picture of the house, but the house is not in there, nor the car, the TV, the furniture. But yeah, so everything, all the things that we see as substance, all of it, ultimately, one way or another, gets back to that foundational security. So we have control of that, sole authority, dominion over that. You have dominion over all of, like I say, everything on top of that. That's the foundation, right? That is the foundation. Now, there's 3 additional steps here to solidify all of that so that you have that dominion, authority. And so anyhow, I hope that helps to clarify on that there. So anyhow, thank you so much for listening. God bless. Love you. Ciao. And keep smiling, as my friend would say.